Easy music.
Hello, hello, Martin. Good to see you. So happy that we're able to do this.
A pleasure to see you here too.
Absolutely. I think that we're going to give people a little bit of time to come on in to the live. I'm going to go ahead and just check LinkedIn for a little bit. It's starting and making sure that everybody can see it. All right. I can see that it is actually starting on LinkedIn now. And we are good to go. Okay, so first things first, thank you so much for joining me. I want to thank everyone that's joining me from the United States. Also, everyone that's joining me on the continent of Africa and beyond. Thank you all so much for being here. For those who kind of just stumbled on this stream and you're like, what is this? And you probably don't know what this is an event that me and Martin have been planning for the last couple of weeks. I just want to give some background. My name is Nicole A. Harris. I'm the Learning Solutions Enthusiast, and I am an ID newbie. So I left the classroom a couple of months ago. I'm less than a year into being an instructional designer. And one of the things I was very interested in is what does this practice look like globally, right? And I looked at Martin on his LinkedIn and I saw that he was doing amazing, amazing things on the continent of Africa in the learning and development space. Now, I know I have people both on LinkedIn and on other social media. So I just kind of want to explain what learning and development is, what that industry is for people that may not be so keen on it. I'm going to actually have Martin give me your rundown as well. But anything that has to do with enhancing human performance, helping employees feel confident and equipped in their job, in their role, everything having to do with training and creating learning experiences so that those who work in their jobs can feel like they have the best path to growth is what we do. So, without further ado, I just want you first, Martin, to kind of just tell us who you are, where you're located, what you do, and just tell us about iPerformance Africa.
Okay. So thanks, Nicole. So just a little bit about me. My name is Martin Wanjoni. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya, in East Africa. So what I do is, for quite a while, I've been providing learning or training in Kenya. I've been hosting some webinars in 2020 and 2021. Done a Pan African HRE conference with about 89 speakers from 39 countries, and with over 40 sessions in some in learning and development, organization development, around coaching, basically just knowledge sharing and well, that's a little bit about me. I run iPerformance Africa. You asked me, it was not intentional. I didn't start out saying I want a training firm, but through curiosity and wanting to discover, I found myself here. So I've been doing this for, I think, the last 5 years now,
Oh,
on
that's
full time. Yes.
That's amazing. Yeah, so you kind of had a segue to it already. Everybody who is in this field, who has become an instructional designer, a learning experience designer, a corporate trainer, everybody knows that you kind of don't say when you're five, I want to be an instructional designer, right? You kind of fall into it and you stumble into it a little bit. So can you give us a brief rundown of what was your unique path to getting into learning and development? What was your unique path?
Okay, so this is how I spent a little bit of time in school, and so when I went to when I graduated, I decided to buy myself a book. So I walked into a library, a bookshop on the streets of Nairobi, looked around for about 45 minutes. Then I settled on a book called Understanding NLP. that it looked like a very nice title to read. So I bought that. 6 months later, book was in English, but 6 months later, I still didn't understand the book. So I thought, okay, I need to find a training so that I can take and understand this book better. Long story short, I ended up in India, in Goa, doing an NLP training.
Martin, can you
So,
explain to our audience what NLP is?
NLP is a neuro linguistics programming. Now, again, also something popular in the States and in Europe and in South Africa and Germany, quite a number of countries. Basically, it is understanding human behavior. So, well, when I took the training, it was just for me to understand my book. Then I decided, when I was on my way back from India, I was like, I could do teach my team how to sell. By the way, my background is sales. I say I'm a salesman. That's where I came out from. So I decided, let me teach my team how to sell, teach them sales so that they can sell better, and I could and more because I was earning a commission off their sales. So that's how I started with trainings, and over time, I found myself training human resource managers. iPerformance Africa is registered with our local Institute of Human Resource Management. So we were doing the CPD training programs. And just to share, and I know this is sounds ridiculous, and this is how I got into instruction design. My thinking was, I'm doing face to face training. So if I want to do e-learning, and we did a program in 2019, if I want to do e-learning, well, I just need to record the live sessions face to face, put them online, and voila. So I did that. I had some few equipment to get that started off. But the thing is, I hated what I did. Everyone else was happy. They don't have to leave their office. They don't have to go to a hotel to do a public training to earn to be able to maintain their membership with the institute. That's the regulator for human resource. So they were happy, and but I wasn't happy. So I asked a friend of mine, and he told me, Martin, if you want to make your program better, if you want greater training, well, I propose do an instruction design course.
Okay,
So
so let me kind of
that's
understand this before we go ahead. So you
mhm,
were in a sales, right? And you
yes.
picked up a book wanting to understand your field better, right? And you didn't really understand the book, but then you did. You went to India, which is amazing, and then you got this understanding, and then you realize, hey, in order to do better, right, with sales and everything, I need to
Mm.
learn how to train the people that I'm working with, right? And then
Ye-
you decided with your training that, you know what, like you were ahead of the curve, right? Right before the way before the pandemic, you said, I'm going to just record these and this is going to be the training. But you noticed, which is very interesting, before you even had an instructional design background, you noticed that just recording and sending things out is not training. Like you weren't happy with it, and then
Yeah.
someone said you should take an instructional design course. Tell us some more.
So what happened? So I ended up in Dubai in 2019 to do our instruction design course with ATD, and well, I've post the training when I was actually what happened was when I was in the training, uh, again a tree I climbed from the top in this way. The guys who were signing us up asked me, Martin, do you think this is the right class for you? And in my head I was like, I've been running trainings for a while. I should be able to ace it. So, but when I get into that class, I'm like, oh, this one I started from the top. So, and then I was asking myself, what have we been doing and calling training? And that kept on coming to me. So I realized there's quite a lot I've been missing over the years. Even so, this was the thing. I was thinking I was doing good, but really, I can't even put that stuff out. So, and that's how I started off. I want to create better learning programs. I want to create learning that is effective and engaging. And that's how I ended up this year doing the 5-star instruction design program with Dr. Max. And again, from a conference of curiosity with where Dr. Merrill himself was facilitating the session. So it's been a journey of curiosity. Curiosity, I think, is what got me here.
I
Yeah.
love that. It's been a journey of curiosity. Guys, put in the chat if your own path has been a journey of curiosity. Let us know if you can relate to that. So it's been a journey of curiosity that got here. I love that so much. And you've mentioned, and we're going to talk a little bit about it later, but some of the trainings you've done with ATD, with the Merrill's principles, like you just wanted to make sure learning and training was better. And all you wanted to do was make sure that the salespeople that you were working with were able to perform better. And then through that path, you're like, wait, what is this? What are we calling training? And then you've been on this
Yeah.
path ever since to make sure that training is better than what it was. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. That was an amazing introduction. Okay. So I wanted to do this today specifically about learning and development in Africa. Some people in the chat said definitely relatable, that it's been a journey of curiosity. The reason why I thought it was really important to center Africa, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody, how Africa as a continent, and elephant in the room, I know we have intelligent people here, but I just want to say it out loud. Africa is a continent, 54 countries, not one country. And the reason why I am making this clear, I'm joking a little bit, but we don't tend to have a full picture, right, of the continent of Africa and how enterprising people are there. I want to read you guys some quotes from some historians and some other old thought leaders, that we kind of still see these ideas today. So, Hugh Trevor Roper in 1963, he said, perhaps in the future, there will be some African history to teach, but at present, there is none or very little. There is only history of the Europeans in Africa. The rest is largely darkness, like the history of pre European, pre Columbian America. And darkness is not a subject for history. And then we have another quote here, and this quote is by George Heigl. And it says, at this point, we leave Africa, not to mention it again, for it is no historical part of the world. I mean, this is a massive claim, right? Has no movement or development to exhibit. What we properly understand by Africa is the unhistorical, undeveloped spirit, still involved in the conditions of mere nature, and which had to be presented here only on the threshold of the world's history. Now, those quotes are pretty harsh, right? They're pretty rough. And the reason why I wanted to bring that out is because Martin is doing great things, but a lot of the times in our practice, we don't really center different parts of the world. So, Martin, I have a question for you. You are a master of partnership, right? I mean, I'm a newbie in instructional design, and every leader that I've added is like, oh, Martin's great. Martin's great. I recently got my master's in instructional design, and my professor was like, you know, Martin? And so everybody knows Martin. So I'm reading these quotes because we know what we see in the media of Africa leaves much to be desired, right? Why do you think it's important for iPerformance Africa to reach outward to partner with people in light of those quotes?
Okay. Let me start with the networking. Let me share why I do what I do. Well, I find it very interesting that when I'm doing what I want to do, just following my desires, my what I want to do, what makes me a little bit happy, what makes me feel satisfied. Um, Others see it as I'm doing great things. Now with the Pan African conference, it was even before the Pan African conference in 20 early in 2020 we were doing webinars. So I was just seated and I'm trying to think, what can I do? We have a lockdown and everything. So I decided to do 5 days of e-learning. And my thinking was, I'll just invite a few people for a conference, for a webinars, 5 days, and then just touch quite a number of countries just to see that is the thinking different in these other countries? Can we have best practice? Of the 54 countries you mentioned, about 30 of them have their own regulators within human resource, some within learning and development. So the idea was to bring thoughts together and people can learn what's best practice. And what would that help? It would put the continent at the center stage. Now, sadly, um, and now, as you say, nobody realizes what's happening here in this continent. So take LinkedIn, where we are. Um, you'd possibly have about 45 million users in Africa on a lower number. And LinkedIn produces a learning report annually. So nobody, and there is no single data that is shared. So if the thing is, if we don't tell our own story, who's going to tell it,
Yeah.
right? If we don't share what's happening, and again with the media, what you know, what most people know of Africa outside is famine, fight, war, and hunger.
Yes.
But it's a whole right. Yes, last week I was in town, Nairobi, and the face is changing. There's a whole road cutting across the city.
Right.
So we don't put out what is happening, what is coming out of if one knows about Africa from BBC, from Al Jazeera, from
Yeah.
CNN, or any other news channel, then well, there's nothing nice. No news ever has good things. It's only the bad things that make the headline.
Right.
So when you bring people together, they realize we can achieve more. We
Absolutely.
can get more done. We can put our story. From the quotes you read, so I think 1 year ago, I bought a book, The Last 2 Million Years.
Hmm.
The Last 2 Million Years has about more than a thousand pages.
Okay.
Uh, and they cover everything, all civilization. But when you go to Africa, it's less than 5 pages,
Wow.
right? So, and it has everything you'd find.
Right.
So, in the last 2 million years, we only have 5 pages of
Mm.
history.
Mm.
So if we don't start documenting our own history, what history will be there if we don't document it ourselves? If we don't bring people together to do what we'd call knowledge management,
Mm.
right? Uh,
Absolutely.
oh, nobody is going to do it. Well, there is no history because it hadn't been documented. Maybe we might say we were not good at documenting, but then now we know we were not good at documenting. Can we start documenting? And it's through bringing people of various countries together, 54 countries. So and that was the goal of the Pan African HRE conference, which again we want to go to do it again this year, at least every 2 years, to have the Pan African conference, which is bringing practitioners, professionals from in a HR, in a talent development, in learning and development, in a organization development, to share not only best practices and what they're doing, but then we can keep track of of uh, of ideas that are coming up.
Absolutely. So I just really loved what you said. Like, if we don't tell our own stories, who else will, right? And I love how collaboration is an agent of that change, right? Like, you're collaborating within the continent, but collaborating outside also helps the story to be told as well. Tell us, let's walk it back a little bit and tell us a little bit more about the Pan African Conference. I love this origin story. It makes me laugh, it delights me. So tell me about how boredom during the pandemic led to this amazing conference. Tell us how many speakers. Tell us everything, Martin, and tell us the name of the conference. Will had a question earlier and wanted to know the name of the conference, and so tell us like the origin story of this conference and what it blossomed into.
Okay, so interesting story. I don't even believe myself when I tell this story. So March 2020, country gets locked down. So I spent 2 weeks just lying around and doing nothing. Then one day I tell myself, I need to do something. So my idea comes. Let me do. Started call. It was fast. The first name was 21 Days of E-Learning, and
Okay.
then I talked to someone in Nigeria, and they told me, Martin, you're going to kill yourself. 21 days is too long. So I said, okay, good. So it went down to 11. And then I settled down on 5. So I set up on Zoom, no idea how to work it out. Set up on Zoom, do a flyer, then put out a booking link. And so when I get the package for Zoom, I do the 100 for the 100 packs. And I'm thinking, yes, I'm good. So on the second day, I check the registration numbers, and I'm like, that idea I had of Zoom won't work. We're at 250. And
Wow.
when I look, it's not only Kenya, but we think we had something even from the Mediterranean. It didn't make sense to me at that time. So okay, so I say, okay, now let's see how it turns out. So we do the 5 days of e-learning, and I have speakers from Nigeria and Kenya to start with, and it's just discussion, just
Right.
pure what you do every day, kind of with L&D professionals
Right.
and practitioners, HR guys, and then on the last day, one of the presenters from Nigeria tells me, Martin, this is what you're doing is good. Why don't you continue doing it? So I'm like,
Mm.
aha, okay, good. So I tell them at the end of that, before we finish the session, I tell them, so we will be doing these webinars 2 times a week. And so we do it 2 times a week, and we ended up doing, I think, 60 of the
60?
webinars. 16, yes. And
Wow.
I would just reach out. The only commonality of that of those webinars was me. I was the moderator, but
Mhm.
we had people from different countries in those sessions. 1 hour, HR professionals from South Africa, from Zambia, from Zimbabwe, from Uganda, from Nigeria, and Ghana. And so by July, I noticed, well, we are doing webinars and we're having participants from around 11 countries. So I think, why not do a Pan African conference? That's how Pan African conference was born.
Oh,
And so I think, and when it hits me, I was like, no, I can't do this alone. I
mm,
need, it's bigger than me, it's bigger than iPerformance. So
right.
how do I pull it? So I reach out and I form a committee of guys from about 5 countries, and
Wow.
that's the organizing committee. And through that team, we did a conference. We got 89 speakers, and were from 39 different countries, and everyone wanted to be part of it in sharing knowledge and
Mm,
sharing what they're doing. And we when we got the, I think 2 3 weeks to the event, we are like, we don't have a keynote speaker. Yes, we had thought about keynote speakers, but we'd never not done anything. So everybody
right.
was finding out things as we move on. Those, yes, we had a plan it laid out, but sometimes what you have, the plan you have on paper and what is actually happening, is two different things.
Right.
So we find we need a guest speaker. So we ask who can be, and someone throws in, why don't we get the CEO of the Society of Human Resource Management? And we're like, oh, yes, that's a good idea. That's a brilliant idea. Okay. So, and some guy in one of the CEO of the institute in South Africa says, let me work on that. I'm like, okay, here we go. So a few days later, I found we're doing meetings with the PA of Johnny, and it settled. Now, again, we would have required more time to book him on this event from his calendar.
Right.
So things aligned in place,
Oh my.
and we executed um, lots of learning from that, loads and loads of learning. But being a first time for everyone, well, nobody is perfect on the first, but then
Right.
we pulled a great conference, and I think in preparation for this year, we'll be releasing those videos for anybody who would like to take on one of
Oh.
the sessions before that was happened in last year.
Oh, that'd be awesome. So I have a question for you. So, you kind of just said it like it's such a casual thing, Martin, but you had the president for the Society of Human Resource Management, okay, of sure.
Yes,
You're in
yes.
Kenya, okay, and you're able to get the president of the Society of Human Resource Management. One thing about Martin, everybody, is that this is the most humble soul. Every time you say anything about leader or thought leader, he just laughs. That's not an easy feat at all, Martin. Um, was most of these connections on LinkedIn, like those collaborations you were doing with other people in other countries, like how did this happen? I know you weren't traveling all over the continent to meet these people. How did this happen?
So I think sometime this year I met someone who asked me the same kind of question. I told
Yes.
him all these connections are on LinkedIn, even
Yeah.
for the webinars. I'm seeing a few people who's on in the audience have participated in one of our sessions, and we connected through LinkedIn. So in between the week when I was doing the webinars, we were doing LinkedIn, and then also WhatsApp was helpful to get the speakers. What we did was, remember the organizing committee? They put word in the various countries, and
Okay.
word traveled fast, and that's how we were able to put together the speakers with this keynote speaker. Up to today, I honestly don't believe we had him in.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yes.
And it's because there's something of value there. You know, we have a comment. Noelle says that she's glad to learn from a continent that molded her and gave her a hunger for knowledge. I think that's important too, because we already know that the collaboration is a two-way street, right? You can learn from people in the United States, and you go to the ATD, you just did the Merrill's principle. So you're always learning, right, from people outside, and you've had great partnerships, right? But to
Yes.
Noelle's point, right now she says she's glad to be learning, right, from the continent that gave her hunger for knowledge. So my question to you then is: we know that you can learn from the outside. What can people learn from what's happening in the learning and development space in Africa? What are some trends or some things that the United States or Europe or anybody else would be good to go to your conference? Why should they pay attention?
So, I think in 2020, one of the ATD best was a bank in Kenya, Kenya Commercial Bank, which means ID. And again, just to bring it to context, the nearest we have in our educational system to instruction design is the education degree. So
Okay,
instruction design as a bachelor's, as a master's is non-existent.
right.
So we're learning as we move on. But then at the highest level of learning is being able to create something. So
Mm,
if we say that if the theories and the principles are the same and cut across globally, then there would be knowledge coming out of Africa. You
absolutely.
can't just, or a way of doing things it's bound to intelligence exists everywhere. So uh, intelligent stuff would be coming from the continent. There's a gentleman, I think, in Nigeria. If you look at what they use, the info, what not the characters. So there's a gentleman who's drawing African characters, which can be used in e-learning across the globe, so that at
Oh,
least there's
wow.
even a yes, yeah.
That's amazing.
So it's a in as much learning is two way.
Yes,
Learning is two way. There is all everyone is a teacher and everyone is a learner. So when we start from there, then we have a lot to learn from each other.
I love that. Everyone is a teacher and everyone's a learner. I want to go back to something that you said in the beginning, right? The heart of learning is creation. I want to link
Mhm.
that to what you said about how kind of new this practice is. Not that it's not because you've had your company what since 2012, iPerformance.
Yes, since 2012.
So, I mean, relatively new, but it's people have always been training, right? People have always need training.
Yes.
But to have it kind of what your Pan African conference has done to kind of bring practitioners together to kind of standardize things, that's new, right? And you were saying even some of the degree programs haven't emerged yet, right? Because it's not necessarily that universal yet. But I love what you said about the heart of learning is creation, because I think what people can learn from you and all of the practitioners in Africa is the innovation is going to be ripe because you are creating from something that's being birthed, right? So I think that
Yes.
because a lot of times when you've been doing something for a long time, it gets kind of stale. You're recycling the same method. So it may be in the States or in Europe or whatever longer, but if when you're seeing it with fresh eyes in this environment that we're in, you can see things with a brand new context, right? You told me a story about, but I want you to flesh it out for me. When the pandemic happened, and this goes back to what can people learn and get from Africa, there was something that shut down outside of Africa and they had to go to you all for training. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Tell me about that.
Okay, yes. So I'm in a number of networks, and in this one network, maybe just first to point out one of the key benefits or the key thing that happened with the pandemic is the openness to collaborate, the openness, then willing to be part of something, and I think people meaning of life a little bit changed. So in this one group, there were facilitators from the US, and they were collaborating and they were running, yes, webinars. And then from those webinars, would come out trainings, which they're facilitating, paid trainings. So the work, where work was coming from, shifted. Yeah,
Mm,
that's ideally what happened. So ideally, someone would not look at to Africa to do consulting or to
right.
do conferencing. You don't have to travel; it's online. So the focus of where business would come from changes.
Mm,
Like for me, I'd never imagine I'd be training someone from France from where I sit.
that's
So
crazy.
I or from Egypt without them moving to Kenya or me moving to somewhere else.
Wow.
So the pandemic changed the business models of very many people, and it bound also to change the business models for ID, and work can come from any part of the world currently.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's why also, if you look, Africa has one of the youngest population. So
Yes.
work, when you look at where workers will come from, and ID being part of work, we're ripe to produce to provide whatever labor is needed in ID. Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to kind of talk on two things, but I want somebody in the chat said that they would love to know the name of the person who's making the characters that you were talking about, the Nigerian person. Do you know their name?
I'd have to check it out on LinkedIn. I could
Okay.
actually just share. Yes.
All right, so we'll get that to you. And by the way, this is a live event, but it's also a networking event. If you're watching from LinkedIn, you can actually click the networking tab. I think Tiffany mentioned earlier, let's add each other, let's network. So this is not a passive thing. This is also, hopefully you leave this, you get to add Martin, and you actually have new connections. So please go ahead and make those connections now. So I have a question for you. So you mentioned Africa has one of the youngest populations, right? So that also means youngest population means largest about to enter the workforce, right? So more people needing to
Mhm.
be trained, more instructional design needed, more learning experiences needed. But also, I was reading in, I think, I want to say it was Forbes, but it was one of those business magazines that about 400 businesses in Africa right now have an annual revenue of $1 billion. And also, it's also projected to be like one of the most entrepreneurial in the world. Right now, 22%, and that was a projection from a couple of years ago, so it might have changed, but 22% of people in the continent, remember 54 countries, everybody, in the continent of Africa are actually opening up their own businesses, right? Including yourself. You're a part of that 22%. With
Yeah.
all of these new trends emerging in Africa economically, with everything going on with these businesses that are burgeoning and these new investments that are happening in Africa, why is learning and development important in Africa now more than ever?
Well, let me backtrack a little bit. So, I have interests in two areas. One is learning and development, and through instruction design. The second one is strategy execution by way of the balance scorecard. Now, if you look at the plan for by 2063 by the African Union, the idea is to skill the young population that will be available there, so that they're able to perform better at the workplace. So again, it might be to just bring the, I don't know whether it exists in the state. People want to go to training because they go out, they have their per diem, so they have their allowance for going to the training, which is something that needs to be changing, so that people are learning so that they can perform better, so that we're also creating trainings that help in skills transfer. So there is big need for instruction design in the continent. Otherwise, that strategy of 2063, how is it even going to be fulfilled? So that's
Awesome.
where learning and development comes in. Now, again, in crisis time, learning and development budgets are the ones to go. I think
Yeah.
2021, I think, was one of the lowest years for anybody in training and development in Kenya and in other countries also.
Yes.
So the need, and the pandemic has taught industry that we need to do training differently.
Yes.
I look at the job descriptions for positions that are being filled and being put out in the market, and you can already see the change. It's not just L&D administrators, but they're looking. Organizations are now looking to create great internal learning programs. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
And I really do love that instructional design can help with the global goal of 2063 in skilling. So it's so much more than just one firm or one company. It's actually instructional design will be at the heart, right, of making sure
Yes.
everything moves forward. We have some comments that I want to read. Tiffany Stedman says skills transfer is the hottest topic now due to the great resignation. Absolutely. Can you speak to that in the great resignation? What is that looking like right now with people leaving and shifting and deciding that they will have a whole nother, path that they want to follow?
What happened is, I think people didn't know other things existed out of work. You get into work and you're there the whole day. So we saw a lot of people getting new kind of picking new kind of hobbies, new kind of activities, and now people are realizing it's not just about work. If you look at also people want now to realize I can work from where I am. I can
Mhm.
work from home. I can work a few days, but then uh, we haven't seen a lot of that. One, the only one when it actually also people want keep their jobs. There have been job losses. So for us, the Great Resignation hasn't. I haven't seen much people saying, "I'm leaving my job to go set up business. I don't want employment anymore." So it hasn't hit this market hard.
Oh, okay, so that's always so interesting to see, like what's happening and where the pockets are.
Mm.
Len says sounds like performance-based instructional design principles and practices that will ensure knowledge transfer back on the job in the workplace. Definitely. Jeffrey emphasized that everyone's a teacher and everyone is a learner. So I have another question for you, and then I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the audience for questions. Thank you guys again so much for being with us. So I have a question, and this question is selfish. I will admit it. Okay. So I have a question about the diaspora. So people that are African descendant all over. So me, I'm from Jamaica, but I live in the United States. People in Latin America, all these people that kind of want to at some point go back to Africa and kind of work and live in Africa and kind of go back to what we consider our roots, right? With the industry growing the way it is, do you think that there's a place for the diaspora to come back and collaborate and learn? Is there a place there? Would it have any sort of impact? What do you think about that?
So that's a very interesting question. So one of the sessions with in the Pan African HR conference actually looked at that.
Okay.
What would be those wanting to come back home or to Africa or back home, what would it take? And the people who have actually done that, maybe someone left their country, went and studied and worked somewhere like in the US or in Europe for 15, 20 years, and they decide to come back. So now what happens is you get new knowledge coming in. So it's more of it enhances what is already existing, and it's more of collaboration. So
Right.
it would help enhance. Okay, like a good example. I met through this LinkedIn connections. I met a Kenyan who's an instructional designer in the US. Now, if he decided to come back to Kenya and settle back home, the practice, what he was doing, the skills and the knowledge he has, obviously would be transferred to others in the time that he's back home. And now
Right.
imagine 100 or 1,000 people coming in to transfer their knowledge and share what their experience is. It would The growth would be nearly exponential. So
Absolutely.
and I think a good example is Ghana. I think the few people from Ghana who went back home, and instruction design is taking root in Ghana.
Okay.
Now, just to highlight, out of the 54 countries we mentioned, only about two would be considered to have something around instruction design. That's South Africa and Nigeria. So again, uh, consider 54, two out of 54. That makes the numbers. And with like Kenya has a population of 30 million, and on average, if you look at the total population, how much would they be impacted?
Absolutely.
A good example, there are investment from by people in the US who have African origin in Uganda, in Nigeria, and it's impacting those economies. Because one of the thing, as just to plainly put, they would just come back with the whole selves. That means them and the resources that are there. You need
Yes.
resources for growth to happen. So if someone comes in and sets up an institute around, um, if you look at the gap that is there, is a big
Right.
gap. So if
Exactly.
you have more people who are coming, and if they're in instruction design, then it improves the standards because they come with the knowledge. They won't come, oh, this is how you do it here. Let's do it this way. No, they'll be like, there's a better way to do this. And the when you learn something new and you don't apply, that's where the mistake is. If you don't know it, then what you know is the best at that particular point in time. So
Absolutely.
that would what would change.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I am going to go to this question from Dr. Vindel Kerr. Please forgive me if I mispronounced your name. It says, what would you say? Let me go ahead and put that here. It says, what would you say are the top three trending areas for executive training on the African continent at this time? And what do you know about the trends in board and training and corporate governance and ESG?
So what's happening? Corporate governance is getting big. I think that and the leadership development, those are the two things I put on top of the list. And then number three, I'd say skills that training the program that transfer skills in whatever area the various people are in. So I'd put those as the professional training. Yeah. So number one would be leadership development. Two, I'd put corporate governance, and all of that would goes around corporate governance. Yeah.
Thank you for that question. All right, Will has some questions for you about the interest in Africa for research on learning and learning evaluation, and how widely professionals are using research inspired learning design practices, and how happy are professionals. I think it cut off a little bit. Let me go ahead. And how happy, sorry, everyone. All right. How happy are professionals in the learning evaluation practices they are able to use? So let's start like one at a time. Okay. So the first one is about what's the interest in Africa for research on learning and learning evaluation. Let's start there.
Okay. So let me start with the area of research. There's a lot. There's a lot. There's less. I would say there's more research to be done than what's already been done. Right? Like the last question on how happy the professionals are in the learning evaluation practice. That's a research that it doesn't exist. Nobody's done that. Now, when you come to evaluation, that's a whole another case scenario. We did a research on the state of learning, and things were not very rosy because start with the evaluation. There's a whole big problem there, right? Someone was talking about evaluation so what we focus. The focus has a lot been on the level one and level two of evaluation. So, but then it's time now to, and this is where now organizations are post the pandemic, that they want to measure what is the organization getting back from investing in training, and then how well are the learners able to apply what they learned from the training. So I would say it's a we're at a stage of we finding what is working and then putting it to test locally. Because from that research, not many organizations were actually evaluating learning. Yeah, but now that I'm seeing that changing. The conversations I'm seeing changing.
Thank you guys for these great questions. Please feel free to add more in the chat. So, you mentioned that Nigeria and Ghana kind of have a stronghold with ID, that it's really growing there and it's taken root in those countries. I know that you don't primarily work there, you're really between Uganda and Kenya. But from what you do know, why do you think Nigeria and Ghana have really started to have a strong ID practice?
Okay, it's actually Nigeria and South Africa, and
Okay,
right now Ghana taking up,
got it.
joining in the slate. Now, number one is I'd say ATD has some rooting in Nigeria. That's
Oh,
number
okay.
one, and Ghana. So they have. It's just like if you find something good and then you take it where you are.
Right.
So that's a case scenario. South Africa, the same kind of thing. So where you find, I think there was an African ATD Africa conference in last year, and that's one of the things that's making this happen in those countries.
Got
So,
it.
and I'm seeing also that there is a growing interest in instruction design in Kenya. Again, is because when you tell some people that hey, there's a new way, there's a way better way of designing and developing and delivering training, then everybody would want to make what they offer in the market better.
Okay, so for those who don't know, I think most of the people on this call know what ATD is, but um, that is the like premier organization for talent development. I think most people know that, but it's the Association for Talent Development. So I just want to make that clear in case we have some people that are just interested in the field, but they don't really know what that is. Now, I know that you so Martin will stay up. The other day when we met, guys, it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning in Kenya, and I felt so bad. But Martin was so committed because he really deeply believes in collaboration and growing this practice across countries, right? And so, you told me that sometimes you go to ATD conferences and it's like 11 o'clock at night there, and all of those things. So I think your conference is so amazing that you created. And is the actual name of it Pan African E-Learning Conference? What's some people have want to know what's the actual name of it, like the full name?
So the full name is a Pan African HR e-conference.
Okay, because you also cover
Yes,
larger HR principles too, right? So beyond
yes.
instructional design. Good. So that's so good to know. What can now that you've talked about ATD to having roots in some African countries, what do you think that ATD or some of these larger organizations, what can they be doing more to make sure that this partnership is stronger?
So number one, I think it's purely by accident. I think that maybe they're in those countries,
Okay.
right? Why do I say that? If I get exposed to one institute and I like their philosophy, then and it resonates with me, then I'll want to tell the other people, hey, I found something good here. So what would need to happen is um, even maybe organize conferences in the like most of the conferences, most of the events I do or as an attendee, you'll find the hour is quite not welcoming. So someone really has to want to do it. I know I've done a class at up running up to midnight, right? So there is a lot of space for collaboration, but the willingness to see it as a potential market,
Yes.
that's the number one key thing. The willingness
Absolutely.
to see local partners they can work with. um,
Absolutely.
I think, and again, due to the size of the continent, you can have one partner that works across the entire continent. You need
Exactly.
partners in a number of countries. And sometimes we all like what is easy, right? We all like what is easy. We all like the path that has already been taken.
Right.
So again, advice would be trailblazers. form partnerships in this in quite a number of African countries, and because it's the same kind of thing, just different location. I
Yes.
bet that nothing changes how you do things. So it's the more the collaborations, the better, and it will expose
Absolutely.
more people to instruction design, better delivery. Then we would all be moving at the same pace.
I think you said something really important is about trusting the local leaders, right? Because if these
Hmm.
outside organizations come in and think that like the best plan of action is to do everything the way that they've done it, like then there's a Martin, there's other people that you've told me about, I know you're not the only one, but there's other people
Yes.
you told me about. So even something as small, but it's not really small and logistical as time. It's not enough to just say, "Oh, we made it open to everybody." It's how do we
Hmm.
actually put effort, right? Or actually leverage and give resources to what you just created out of boredom, which has become this amazing Pan African staple, right? And it's really important. So it's about funneling resources to people that have already been doing it, right? Have already been putting in that work. I think that that's super important. We have some other questions here. Okay, let's see. All right, Beatrice. All right, says it's coming up. What would you say are some of the big changes happening in L&D across Africa?
Okay. I think with the realization of better ways to do things, many people in learning and development in the continent are adopting this learning that they're doing, and so people want not just trainings that provide information but actually helpful in transfer of skill, which is the whole goal of learning anyway. So that's the number one I'd say that is happening. Like I know people. I've come to know people in Nigeria who are doing great things. I know people in South Africa who are doing great things, and it's what the key thing is here. Those that think they can change the world, those who are not shy of making mistakes, those who are not shy of ruffling feathers by changing the status quo. So that's why we are headed. We are looking at it. That's what's happening currently. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We have some good questions. We are going to get to them, but I have a question for you that just kind of popped in my head. Why do you think the Pan African Conference, the HR conference, spread like wildfire? I think you said you had 89 speakers. Forgive me if I got the number wrong,
Yeah.
but you
That's
did. Like,
right. Yes.
and how many countries altogether? Like, why do you think it spread like wildfire when it was just a conception of pandemic boredom? Like, why do you think so many people gravitate towards this? What is happening in the space that made so many people like latch on?
And it's human to want to relate, human to be wanting to be part of something. It just goes. We are humans. We are social, and we want to learn. That's the number one key thing.
Mm,
And I think um, in based on the number of countries, people would like to know, is our thinking how is our thinking measured to the thinking of people in another country, right?
right.
Like, and it's in all the 54 countries, there are 54 different cultures. Like
Yes.
now, if number one, if you look in Kenya, in Uganda, Kenyans are highly rated in terms of being employees. Um, uh, Kenyans go to Tanzania and they take more jobs from the Tanzanians. So, and
Mm,
again, it's all in. Would like to know what makes these people in the professionals in this country tick. What is it they know that we don't know that we can learn from them? So
mm.
that's one of the key thing, and then the need to associate. That was, I'll be honest, uh, I shocked myself. I shocked myself. When people talk about it, I'm like, okay. Uh, I was just doing something like it's like the way you have a pullover and then you just pull on the string and then you don't know what is coming, but you just continue pulling. That's exactly what happened,
I
right?
love it.
So,
I love it. It was a
yeah.
need, and you were the one. Didn't you win an award?
Um. Now, yes, there's some. I got an award for presenting in Nigeria in the talent development conference, which they do in October. And interestingly, it was happening at the same time we were doing the Pan African conference, but I
Okay.
still presented in their conference. So and then they shipped the award for being a speaker. Yeah,
That's awesome. All right, so we have
yeah.
some questions about languages. So for those who don't know, Africa has approximately 1,500 to 2,000 languages. So Lenz asked a good question. He said, with the many languages on the African continent, how does language use impact L&D initiatives? For example, is there a need, real or perceived, to ensure that training is available in multiple languages, depending on the target learners? That's a really, really good question.
Okay, so and we were discussing this. The two major languages would be English and French. So there is Francophone Africa and Anglophone Africa. So at the first level, that's those are the languages. Then when you go in country, again depending on the audience, the training has to be made for that. So like I know there are people who will have an English in training, training in English, and they would want people like transferring it to maybe a Luganda, which is the now, maybe just to go back, I speak English, Kiswahili, and my mother tongue Kikuyu. That's three. So on average, you'll find people with two or three languages. So now, depending on the audience, you might have to put that training in that language. But most trainings are either in English or in Franco or in French.
So
Yeah.
the English and French are more like the business languages. Would you
No,
say?
no. Okay, okay. Let me use Kenya and Rwanda, which
Yes.
are near neighbors, separated by just one other country.
Right.
So Rwanda was francophone until they switched to English,
Okay.
right? And they have their local languages. So if they're doing anything official, they'll be doing it currently in English. Previously was in French. So again, they're having issues. They have a generation that does French, and they have another generation that is doing English, right? So, but then in Kenya, if I'm running a training, it will be in English. That I know most of the audience will be understanding English and can speak English, and
Okay.
then
Awesome.
I'll train in English. Yes,
That's
right.
so interesting.
So, and then that also has a downside in it. Like Congo is mostly French, so I can go train in Congo because of, or only the audience wouldn't be that big. So because
Oh,
most of it is French, yeah.
oh, really good to know. And I love
Or
it too. Oh, go ahead, Martin.
take the example of Cameroon. There's francophone Cameroon and anglophone Cameroon. Still one country.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
That is a real that's a really good point though.
Yes.
I think one of the reasons why it's good is because it continues to expand people's view that Africa is not just one story, right? And that's why there's a need for all sorts of practices and practitioners. So that's really good. We have some other questions, but I'm interested. Can you just tell people, because you have this business, iPerformance Africa, can you just tell people, so you're really interested in instructional design, but really strategy, execution. Tell us what your company actually does with strategy execution. Tell us some examples and how you work with different companies. What are some things you're asked to do? You mentioned being in France and Egypt, but on your day to day, what's your company's expertise?
Okay, so and again, I'll say I don't know how I found myself in this. I'd always wanted to be a salesperson, and but I didn't know better. Yeah, so we do we do strategy execution using the balance scorecard, and ideally, to achieve strategy, you'll find the skills gap, which are covered by learning. So, one, we help organizations through learning, which is part of their strategy. So, two ways we can either go into an organization and we are helping them to translate and cascade their strategy, and then L&D will be somewhere in there, and then we'll be able to provide the learning to close the training gap, because it would be the balance scorecard is about 30 years, but quite a number of businesses haven't adopted a strategy execution method. So balance scorecard is what we help them with.
Can
And
you
one
explain
of
that
the
a little bit for people that may not know?
okay, Balanced Scorecard is actually was first published in the Harvard Business Review by Doctors Kaplan and Norton in 1992, and over the years they've been teaching Balanced Scorecard, and there's been research that has been happening around by the companies that are executing. So basically, is what value does the organization want to provide to the market, and then looking at the four perspectives, and this plugs in into the organization's strategy. So we help the organizations come with the up with the strategic objectives, right? I highlight the strategic objectives and then come up with initiatives to achieve those strategic objectives. And then in performance management, help them to identify their KPIs, the strategic objective KPIs, the strategic initiative KPIs, and then what they do every day, the operational the key performance indicators. So that's what we are able. When everyone understand in the organization understands strategy, then everyone is able to contribute, and they see how they contribute to the success. Because like take a, like someone at the reception, a receptionist, or take the instruction designer in that organization. Do they know what how they contribute to the success of the organization through the strategy? It's not just about providing learning, is how are you directly impacting on the success of the strategy. So we
I
two
love that.
tied, yes. Yes.
I love
So
that.
and
Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
and we're trying quite a number of things. We're trying quite a number of things. So I experiment a lot. What works I keep, what doesn't work I don't do that. So again, we're trying to provide, we're looking at how can we be the source of learning for organizations that are specific to them, or we train the subject matter experts in instruction design. So like one of the local electricity producer, we just had a session with them last year. It was about a 10-week program, 10-week program for subject matter experts who train in the organization on the daily to day basis. And we're just looking at various areas of L&D, like how do you do your training needs analysis? How do you evaluate learning? How do you measure the return on investment on learning? Those kind of things. You know? So we are hoping now that they will sit down and redo and rethink how they train in the organization and for what purpose. So
Wow,
that's
that's
what we do
amazing.
on a daily basis. Yes.
I love that. That's really making a change because you talked about level 1 and 2 evaluation, but you're helping people get to a long term looking at their ROI and the return on investment and like what this really can do for us long term. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. That your company is doing great things. I'm going to go to some of the other questions we had. Um, Beatrice said, in your view, what are some of the challenges facing talent management and L&D professionals in achieving the ideal learning strategy in their organization?
In one sentence, I'd say lack of knowledge.
Mm.
Right. You see, if you don't know what you're doing wrong, then what you're doing is right. I don't know
Mm.
if it makes sense.
Can we pause there?
Right?
Let's live there. If you don't know what you're doing is wrong, then what you're
Yeah.
doing is right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So like in our own effort, we the skilling level is now maybe I'll just go one step back.
Yes.
Most of the people in learning and development, in talent development, are in HR.
Right.
Now the competencies required for HR and the competencies required for talent development totally different.
Got it. Yeah.
Now take the HR with the HR knowledge and everything around HR and applying it to talent development, won't work. So once that we real and I had a conversation last week with someone in a who's a HR and that attended a training, and they're like, Martin, I see what you've been saying.
Hmm.
What this the competencies or the capabilities that HR have. Well, we require different, also another set of capabilities to be able to do learning and development and talent development. So that's the biggest challenge. Number two is people not understanding why go through all the problem to the understanding of what is the role of instruction design in learning. That's a key number one. So, and
Yes.
that once we have that, then I think that bigger challenge is sorted, and then we'd be looking at the other smaller any that come up. The change
Right.
element, that would be the second one. Because if 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 you've got to start learning something from zero and you've been doing it for a number of years, you would ask yourself, why do I even want to do this? But
Mm,
then the change would be different.
got
Yeah.
it. Yeah, and I think that one problem is pretty universal. That whole idea of what really is this purpose of instructional design. So we're at an hour and five, everyone. Thank you guys for being engaged. We're going to wrap up shortly, but I can't let Martin leave without some of these other questions. So I know Martin's camera's off, but I think he will be back shortly. So while he's coming back, I'm going to ask some of your questions that you guys have. You guys had some really great points earlier. And please forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Just spell it phonetically for me so I can make sure I get it right. Koniqua, I believe it is. Is that Koniqua says it sounds like memberships spread through word of mouth and people that are champions versus the intention on the part of the learning organizations. So she was saying that it seems like, all of the connection that you guys are able to have and the organizations you guys were able to have really seems like it was about word of mouth rather than a big organization coming and gathering. You guys were able to gather kind of internally. And if I didn't capture exactly your ideas, Kaniko, please go ahead and let me know that. And will let us know about, other than ATD, we have LDA, the Learning Development Accelerator, which is also global. And he put some information about that as well. There's also the International Society for Performance Improvement for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So it's cool to know that there's other people that are thinking about being more global. And then Max gave us some information about a conference too. So all of these resources is exactly why we're here, right? To go ahead and get those. So we also have one more question, but I also want to open it up. So we're almost at the end, everyone. But if you have any other questions, please let us know. And we're going to go ahead and continue now. So, my last question, or one of my last questions for you, Martin, is one of your conference taglines. I think it said HR for transforming HR for the future of Africa. Do I have that correct? Was that the
Yeah.
tagline? Okay,
Yes.
transforming HR for the future of Africa. Why did you guys choose that tagline? What did that tagline mean when you guys came up with it?
Okay. So actually, it took us a while to settle on that, but the
Okay.
idea was it goes back to the being having the highest young population.
Mm,
So how do we um, scale that population to transform the continent? What happens currently is we scale locally, and then talent goes abroad, which is not good. So we're looking at how do we train and then keep that talent
wow.
in the continent, and that's because people are the ones who transform, right? Their
Mm,
work, their ideas, and their contribution. So that was the whole skill people so that
mm,
they can perform better within where they are, and not just skill them and this is I'm talking about academic skilling, right? And also from industry. I've known a few people who've gone to work in the Arab Emirates or in other in Europe. Now, if they we are not if the continent is not suitable to keep that talent, then how can we even have any transformation
mm.
and having the best practices? Most people who go work abroad, when they come back, they find it hard to fit. So, this might also help in making easy for those who are coming back to settle after having done their trainings and worked abroad. Yeah. So
I
that's why those were the things we were thinking around.
I love that. We call that here. I'm sure you probably have heard the term, maybe not, maybe so. We call that brain drain. Where the
Yes.
most
Mhm.
talented, yeah, you know that, like the most talented, in a place, and then they leave, and even if they're trained there, right? And so I really enjoy like the philosophy about it, right? It's about transforming people. I think when I came into instructional design, um, one, I was really concentrating on leaving the classroom and starting a new chapter. But as I got more into instructional design, meeting people like you, seriously, I'm not just saying that because you're here. I started to really think about like the philosophy of what we're doing. We're not just showing someone how to use new software or a new program. We're really helping people feel transformed, or to feel confident, we're helping to feel their purpose, right? And I love what you're saying. It's equipping the youth to know that the future is there. Like if they work there, they're gonna get what they need to grow in their fields, right? They're going to be supported by local learning and development companies. So I just love this conversation because I don't even think I fully wrapped my head around it when I asked you to join me in conversation. But it's really clear to me that L&D is so much more than just making more sales for an organization, but especially for where Africa is right now and being so emergent. It's really about undergirding everything that's going on there in Africa. I think that's really special. So thank you for sharing that with us. I'm going to check to see if the chat has anything else. I did share Martin's LinkedIn in the chat, everyone. So please connect with him because I could talk to Martin all day, but it is late there. So it's getting late in Kenya. So I don't want to talk to Martin for 5 hours and he can't wake up in the morning. But do we have any last minute questions? I feel like we barely scratched the surface. So maybe this means we got to do this again. Because I feel like I'm looking at my notes here and I'm just like, I have so much more that I can ask you. But I know that this
Yeah.
won't be the last time. I want you to kind of tell everybody that's listening, you really just did it. And kind of on a last note, I kind of want you to tell us, like, what have you learned in this journey of curiosity, like you told us in the beginning, right? What have you learned about what it means to like forge your career and your purpose? What can other people learn from, I know you're probably gonna laugh because but what can other people learn from your journey, Martin? um, what has it taught you that you don't know how you got here but you are here? What can we take away from that in our own careers?
Okay, so but before I get to that, so
Yes.
just to address something I saw on chat, um, like this year I'm exploring more bodies, more institutes, right? So it's not just one; they're out there. I'm trying to learn and again introduce them to the community, the L&D talent development community in the continent. I always say the more the merrier. The more institutes you have people know about, then the better. Then people can take what they resonate with, the philosophies they resonate with, and work with that. Now, for me, and I'll tell you back to the question you asked me. I still can't explain up to today how I ended up only ending up with a farm that focuses on strategy and learning and development. But one thing I know is been what's led me here is just following my passion, following my heart. Put me in holes at times, but then that's what learning is all about. I right now know how to not to do a few things, right? So and I always say these. Yes, you can have the clear path, the one that has been taken, or you can use pick one that has not been taken. The journeys are different, but what matters in the end is, can you say you've had a good life? Can
Hmm.
you say you've had fun? Because for me, it's just been following my heart and doing the things that I think I like. So I'll experiment. If I don't like it, then it's not for me. So a little
Absolutely.
bit more of experimentation, a little bit of wanting to collaborate, uh, not staying where you're comfortable. That's the key number one. I always
Absolutely.
tell myself it could have been, it could be easier, right? But why? Um, Sometimes I don't even know what I'm doing. but I'm
Right.
just half the time, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. But then the other half makes all the sense. But then when you add them all together, it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Like if you ask me how I ended up doing five-star instruction design, again was from a free session, an introduction session, then did a 1 day, then took on the certification. Where that one is going to lead, um, the one thing I know is I'm not doing my trainings the same way I was doing them before. I'm
Mm,
designing them differently,
right.
right? Now, why that? A new philosophy have come across, and I think this is what I'm this is what my thinking actually is. But with thinking, it changes, and we move with it as it is changing. We say change is the only constant. What better example than this for me? Yeah. So yes, I know a lot of exist. A lot of people believe this is the right way. This is, but I'm saying find out what is the right way for you. What makes
Absolutely.
all the sense for you, right?
Absolutely. Martin, I want to thank you so much for your time. As an instructional design newbie, part of the reason why I create content on LinkedIn, this is my new hobby. And I do it because I'm not just interested in going to work every day and working on a PowerPoint or Captivate. I'm interested in why I'm working on the PowerPoint, why I'm working on Captivate, and the larger picture, and speaking to people like you who I think are amazing thought leaders. Speaking to people like you really makes me know that I made the right choice. And though we've invited everybody to our conversation and they've contributed as well, I will say I've done this selfishly, and you have helped me gain more confidence in my new path. And I'm saying this in front of everybody, so you can't run away from it. You're my mentor now. And so you have no choice. You can't disconnect from me on LinkedIn because everybody knows it. And it means a lot to me to have a mentor on the continent of Africa.
Uh,
That's personal to me. And I just thank you so much for your willingness. And I hope that everyone that's here, everyone that has a conference or has the power to, will invite you to their conference because you are an expert, and you have such amazing thoughts, and you deserve a seat at that table, every table. So I thank you so much, and I wish iPerformance Africa so much more success. Please add iPerformance Africa online as well. You'll see it on Martin's page. And I want to end on this note. You may well be aware, Martin, that in the United States it's Black History Month, which I did not plan when I did this. But I think it's important to talk about accountability. You mentioned that LinkedIn has this report annually that talks about all these other countries, right? And African continent, the stats and the analytics are not always there. Just like anyone else on LinkedIn, you've contributed so much to this platform, and I hope that through our conversation that those who do analytics over there, whatever, will start to consider, like, we need to make sure that we're including the majestic continent in this conversation because there's so much that Africa has to offer. And any last thoughts, Martin, before we sign off?
well, for me, I'd say it's been a very interesting, nearly 1 hour and a half of just having conversations. So, and I'm seeing I'm seeing people who I read what their thoughts are in this session. I'm like, okay, so this. I was talking to someone just before this session, and I told them I don't even know how I got myself into this session. But the last one is I like working with curious people. I like
Mm,
working with people who want to try out new things. Well, what there to lose? I think there's more to lose if you don't try it rather than when you try it. So I think it's
absolutely.
let's stay curious. Yes.
Let's stay curious. I love that. I wanted to end on a clean, beautiful note, but somebody in the chat just said something. So I have to. I think it would have been so nice and beautiful to say, let's stay curious. Bye, everyone. Thank you. But I have to ask. So somebody said, and this will be the last one. Somebody said, what's next? What's next for iPerformance Africa for you? What's going on?
Um, this is my thinking. I'm thinking we're doing a Pan African HRE conference. I'm thinking, how do we create a platform for learning that is best practice that every person in Africa who is interested in instruction design can be part of? available and accessible learning, so that at least we get things moving. And we as with instruction designers, everybody has their thinking, everyone has some contribution. How do we bring all that to one place?
Mm,
I know it's a big thought when I was thinking about it, and it's all about collaborations,
yes.
right? I can't do it alone, but with people who we're working with, we're collaborating with, then it becomes easy, right? Well, we say that it takes a village to bring up a child. Now it takes the whole ID community to create more ID. That's what I'd say.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's a beautiful way to end it. Oh, thank you so much, everyone. My heart is full. I hope that you guys have so much to take away from this. This should be recorded. I'll post on my page. Any links to it. Share it widely. Start getting into your groups and thinking, how can we collaborate with Africa in this endeavor and helping them as they actually not helping, coming alongside as they've already created their own paths through L&D. So yeah, not helping, coming alongside. So thank you guys so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye, everyone.